Hello everyone, it is Jazz here. It is time for my November reading wrap up. I feel like the theme for the reading of November was, it was good, but I had qualms with it. So, yeah, not a lot of new 5-star reads, which you know is rare for me because I love almost everything. But this month I was like, I liked it, or that was not great. That was like the theme of November. So I guess every once in a while I do have those months just like the rest of you, and it should make reviewing these books entertaining for you guys. So let's jump in. The first read of November was Black Butler Volume 1. This is a manga that is about a 12-year-old boy named Cecil Phantom Hive. I hope I'm saying his first name correctly. Anyway, he is a earl and also a business mogul because he is basically, from what I could tell, totally orphaned. Luckily, though, he has the help of the illustrious butler, Sebastian, who is a very ideal butler for all causes. He can save the day in the event of a household crisis with the servants, or he can also, delve into that dark underworld of London's underbelly and save the day with his preternatural fighting skills that are really super fun. The thing about Black Butler that I discovered, because I haven't watched the anime or anything, this is my first try into this world, is that this first volume really reads like the very first volume of something. Like, you're just getting the introductions to the characters and getting, the little ideas of what the dynamics between the servants and Sebastian are, and the young master Cecil and Sebastian are. This isn't really a lot of plot until the very end. It's very kind of anecdotal to start off, just so you can get the introduction to all the world and the dynamic and stuff like that. So because of that, I felt like I wasn't truly attached to the characters yet. I think that as I go on with the story, I think it's very plausible that I will get really attached to everyone in here and really fully enjoy the world even more. But this was more like an introduction to me, so I didn't feel that quite yet. But that was really my only true qualm with it, was that I didn't immediately attach to loving the characters in this. That being said, I did get a lot of joy from reading this. I think that it has some wonderful anecdotes with the servants and Sebastian, because these servants that work for Phantom Hive are so incredibly inept, and it's freaking hilarious. The butler ends up saving the day all the time, and it's really fun to see how he gets on their case, but also how he saves the day. The fight scenes and stuff with Sebastian are super, super fun to watch, him use a fork to do some crazy, fight scene-ness and whatnot. It's very clever in that way. And also, there was a really cool twist at the end, so I really am intrigued to read more of this. So there was a lot of stuff that I really, really enjoyed about this, but I just haven't connected to the characters as much as I want to yet, so I ended up giving this 4 stars. Then I completed Peter and the Secret of Randoon by Dave Barry and Ridley Pearson. This is the 3rd book in the Peter and the Starcatcher series, so I can't really summarize this book for spoiler purposes, but if you know anything about the series, you know that the series is basically a prequel to Peter Pan. It's kind of how Peter Pan became Peter Pan. This one, not unlike the previous 2 books, is an adventure involving Peter and Molly, who will eventually become Wendy's mother. I was weirdly underwhelmed by this book. Not disappointed, just underwhelmed. It was good, but I wanted more from it, because it is the 3rd book in the series. There is a fourth book, but that one's more about Wendy. So it's really, I think, going to be the last, like, Molly and Peter kind of book. And so I just wanted more from this book. Now, there is a lot of great stuff about it. It still has the fun, whimsical humor that the previous two books have, which I really love about it. It also has some really good adventure elements. I really liked how everybody kind of pitched in and did their part in it, and it was great. And I always really enjoy seeing young George Darling get into the action. It's fun to see him be like part of the adventure with Molly and like see their like cuteness. I don't know. The darling cuteness. And so that was really fun. I, of course, just really, love the way that these characters have been developed in this way, because in this series, I actually like Peter, whereas in Peter Pan, I enjoy the book, don't get me wrong, but Peter Pan in the original J.M. Barrie book, like, worries me. Like, he's kind of psychotic. I enjoy this Peter. He's fun, and he really, like, wants to help people and be awesome, and I just kind of wish Peter Pan in the actual book Peter Pan was like that sometimes. Did have a couple of issues with this book, for sure. The first one, and probably the main one, was the subplot. It was not well executed to me. I feel like in comparison with the previous two books who executed the subplot really, really excellently, this was really kind of subpar. It did play an important kind of part to the main plot in the beginning of the book in spurring off something that happened to Peter that spurred off the main plot. But after that, it was just there, and it felt like it was just there and forgotten about occasionally because they felt like, well, we started it, now we need to finish it off. Not because it necessarily needed to be there. Another thing that truly did bother me is that they didn't really do much with Captain Hook in this. And considering like how important of a character Captain Hook is and the things that I would have done if I had written this book and had Captain Hook in the situation that he's in this book, I would have used him a heck a ton more than they used him in this book, and I would have had way more scenes including that character. Another thing that I wasn't sure if it bothered me or not was there are quite a few reveals in terms of world building in this, and I wasn't sure if I liked them. I feel like maybe I will reread this series someday and maybe I will come down on a more definitive thought process on the reveals in terms of world building in this, and that was like the main thing that I was excited about in this book. But when they were revealed, I felt kind of like, okay, that's kind of meh feeling right now, but maybe that's good. I think I just wanted it to be like deeper than it was, and I don't know why I thought that, because these books are mostly whimsical. Like, they have a very whimsical, fun vibe. So I think I wanted something deep, and I got whimsical in terms of the world building stuff, and maybe that's why I wasn't sure if I liked it, but I didn't hate it. I still thought it was all right, and it made sense. So I think I will not totally list that as a qualm as of now. I did listen to this in audiobook. I did quite like this audiobook. I think the reader does an excellent job. He really does a great job with all the different characters. I especially like how he reads the Lost Boys and things like that. So do check out the audiobook. If that same reader reads the other audiobooks, I'm sure that they are equally as good. So this book was definitely still a fun ride, but I just wanted more from it. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. And I finally completed my buddy read book, Arch Enemy by Frank Bador, which I have been buddy reading the whole Looking Glass Wars series with Max Washington Songs. I will link you to his channel in the description. He does fun music and stuff on his channel. This is the 3rd and final book of that trilogy, and of course I can't summarize this whole book in full, but not unlike the previous book, it draws from classic literature and is kind of a series that's a steampunkish fantasy centering around the Alice in Wonderland story. I really enjoy this series. If you followed this channel for any time at all, you know that I talk about it quite a lot because while I'm not the biggest fan of Alice in Wonderland, I am a big fan of this spin. It has a very sort of weirdly whimsical but also weirdly kind of, you know, action movie kind of spin, which I really enjoy. I would say this final book is probably more on the political side in terms of the Wonderland, you know, world. It makes you see like just a lot of political play, kind of like has that chess game vibe to it, just because there's two villains who also kind of hate each other, and then there's of course Alice and her gang that are kind of mixed up in that as well. And it's very interesting to see how the different groups play off each other. There are also just some wonderful emotional moments in it with the good guy characters that I really love, and I can't really talk about them too much because they would be spoilers. I did, of course, enjoy reading this immensely. It was super fun because I think the previous two books in the series I had read like a couple of times, but this one I hadn't gotten to reread because I guess I would get distracted by other books and not get around to rereading this one. So I could, you know, kind of approach it as if it were new because I didn't really remember any of the plot twists or anything like that, and that was interesting, but it kind of had a not so great effect because I felt like upon rereading it maybe wasn't the 5-star book that I thought it was. Felt like it was more like a 4.5 or a 4.75 kind of book, and the reason for that I can't really put my finger on, but I do think it also has to do with the subplot of the book, and I feel like it was kind of brought in at the beginning and then forgotten about for a really, really long time. At least though Frank Beddor didn't try to bring it in when it didn't need to be there, so I think it gets extra points for that. And I don't know if this is because I read it really, really slowly or not, but it did feel like it was slower to get into, that this one had like more setup in the front, and it kind of needs it. So I'm not gonna like down it for that. Now, by the middle of the book where books should get exciting, it did get exciting. So yet again, not gonna hate on it, but I guess I was like used to a certain pacing to the books, and it has like a different pacing than the other two books, and maybe because I was reading it kind of slowly, I felt like it was taking a really long time to progress. So that could have just been my reading speed or my like mood or whatever. So I don't know. That could be another reason why I felt like it was more of a 4.75 or 4.5 kind of book on rereading. Otherwise though, highly enjoyable book. Highly recommend the series, especially if you like new spins on stories. If you're an Alice in Wonderland purist, you might have a little bit of trouble with it, just a warning. But if you're not a purist and you're open, you probably will enjoy this series. And also, I think that if you like books that are kind of written with a very cinematic sort of pacing and sort of writing style, you will enjoy this series, and in particularly this book, because I really feel like it did very cinematic type writing. Next, I completed Bleach volumes 1 through 3 in this 3-in-1 volume. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce any of the characters' names because I'm going to butcher them because they're all in Japanese and I don't want to look like a fool. So if you wonder why I'm not saying anybody's name, that's why. But this is a manga that is centered around a young man in high school who can see the dead. And he's always had this ability. One day he meets a young woman who is a soul reaper who works for the mysterious Soul Society. Basically, her job is to send the good souls to, you know, the pleasant places and to kind of fight off the souls that have kind of become warped monsters that are like evil spirits that prey on, you know, good people and attack them and things like that. She's kind of in charge of fighting those bad dudes off. insanity ensues, and she ends up accidentally giving her powers to this young man, and, you know, craziness just happens in his life because now he's kind of like a stand-in Soul Reaper until she can get her powers back somehow. When I started this manga at first, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. And then it slowly grew on me as I got to know the characters and got into the story more. The main reason when I started it that I wasn't sure I was going to like it is I just felt like the characters were yelling all the time, and it was kind of irritating. I recognize that this is in the manga anime zone where, you know, characters yell all the time a lot because they have a lot of feelings, people in anime and manga, and I get it. But in this, it just seemed like more so than normal and possibly more than needed. As I continued on, that did kind of pull back a little bit, and I got, you know, to know the characters and understand where they were coming from and sort of their backstories and all those fabulous things. So I think I just kind of needed to get past like the first 50 pages, maybe 60 pages, to like really get in the flow of Bleach and what it's trying to do. And it really is quite endearing as it goes on. Like, I don't know, I really started to get attached particularly to the main character. It balances like the dark elements with humor, and there are points in here where I was just laughing like an idiot because it's got like a weird dark humor that I really do enjoy. I also just liked how like generally like weird it is. Like, it's weird in a very good way. And so you know that I like that. Even though like the first few pages were like not my favorite thing, I think it's so good that I gave it a chance because I ended up really enjoying it. And I definitely want to read more of the series. So I'm going to definitely check out more of this at the library and continue to give it a chance because I am very intrigued now and also very endeared to the people in this. If you like action slash emo slash, you know, dealing with the supernatural type stories, highly recommend this manga. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. The last book I completed in November is Dune by Frank Herbert, which is, I guess, technically the first book in the Dune series, although I don't know. It also says that it's the 10th book on Goodreads, so I think you're supposed to read this one, though, first. Maybe chronologically, it's something different. I don't know. Whatnot. This is the hardest book in the world to summarize, so I'm literally looking at Goodreads to figure out how to summarize this book. But it's basically set in a far future, in a sort of feudal interstellar system. So there's lots of planets, but it has like a feudal sort of setup with the way the world is built. And there's like lots of different houses that are like run by lords or barons, etc., etc. This centers around the heir to a duke who is named Paul, and his father and mother and like their whole house has taken control over a planet called Arrakis. And this is a sort of desert planet. The reason they're taking over Arrakis has a lot of political upheaval to do with it. And so they're also, as a family, kind of in danger. And also, the planet itself, Arrakis, is very dangerous because it has lots of sandworms and, you know, the desert itself is dangerous. But they're taking control of this planet to basically mine what is called the spice, which is a very, you know, expensive and money-making type commodity. And also, Paul has kind of superpowers. It's very hard to explain. I will link a summary of this somewhere below if you don't know what Dune is about. Because I'm explaining it so badly. When I talk about this book, you're going to hear the word execution a lot because the bottom line, I guess, of my thoughts on this book is that some of the ideas are good. What the author was trying to do, like plot-wise and world-building-wise, was very decent, and he had some decent ideas going on. But the execution of these ideas was not great. And when I say not great, it was occasionally very bad. I can describe this in 3 parts because this book is in 3 parts. First part, actually pretty decent, pretty interested in what was going on, lots of political intrigue. Second part, the pacing's a little off, but I was still interested enough to continue the book. The third part, slogging up a humongous dune. It is such a slog. It was so hard to finish that third part. It really started to go downhill or down a dune in this last bit of this book. And I just, it was real hard. And I'm glad that I audiobooked it at that point because I could speed up the reader. Even when I was fairly enjoying this book in the first and sorta in parts of the second part, it still had a lot of issues for me. Now, the main one is the world building. I really respect that Frank Herbert put so much effort into the world building. You can tell he put a lot of effort into the world building because he created this much of an appendix and also, a huge section on the glossary for terms. The problem is, if you don't want to read the appendix or the glossary, you are lost. You are so confused in this book. You have to at least check out the glossary once or twice, or you are not remotely going to know what the heck is going on. So basically, in terms of execution, he doesn't know how to explain the elements of his world without making it a lot of just, rhetoric. Like, I'd rather you not spend 4 paragraphs telling me just like the backstory of the whole world, and I'm glad that he didn't do that. But he also didn't explain anything so that you could use context clues to get what things were. He acted like you lived in his brain and you had lived on this planet forever, and that is not the case, my friend. I was annoyed a little bit with it just because I felt like I didn't want to do all the work because I was audiobooking it to go and read the appendix to figure out what everything was happening on the planet or whatever. So I didn't want to do the effort to truly enjoy it. Even if I had liked this whole entire book, I wouldn't have liked it as much as I could have because I wasn't willing to do the extra work. And the book itself is kind of a lot of work to read in general, just because of the world building and how high sci-fi it is, and sort of, I would say it has some fantastical elements in it as well. So it's already work. I didn't want to do additional work on top of that. So that was one of the main problems with this book. But as the book goes on, as you get to like the middle of the book, or maybe a little past that, it does get super repetitive. Frank Herbert tends to go through these elements where he just marinates on a philosophical idea for the longest time, which sometimes was fine. It didn't bug me that bad. But sometimes he would do a character's inner monologue that was a philosophical thought during a fight scene. I don't care during a fight scene. I just want to know what happened in the fight. And also, are you really going to do a philosophical thought when you're fighting somebody? No. Now, my main qualm is that the last, 200 pages, possibly more than that. The reason why they were such a flipping slog was this book just started to fall apart. It started to get weird and not in a good way. The love interest aspect got super weird as soon as that was introduced. I can't even explain it because it was so weirdly approached. And then also there is, near the end of the book, which is not the best place for a time jump, there is a 2-year time jump, and it is possibly the worst executed time jump that I have ever read. Now, the reason for that is because the main character, Paul, does, have the ability to sort of, see visions of what the future could be, or like kind of know what the future could be because of his gifts or whatever. So when you left him, because we saw him and then they left and talked about like the villainous-y type characters for a couple sections and we came back. before, when we left him, he was kind of in the midst of a Vision-y quest thing. So when we came back to him, I just thought, oh, he's having a vision of the future or something. Took me several pages to realize, no, this is actually a for real 2-year time jump. Frustrating. Also, I don't think you should, in a nearly 800-page book, have a time jump near the end of the book. Like, that's early in the book kind of stuff. Or, like, to me, that's like middle of the book at least kind of stuff. Now, add on to my thoughts in general on the audiobook, which I also sort of liked but had problems with. The reader is very good that reads like the main bit of it, but it also has like these dramatized sections where they have multiple actors dramatize it. Now, this would have been pretty cool if not for the fact that they don't like consistently pick a scene to dramatize. Like in the beginning of the book, they were really good about picking like really good scenes to have be the dramatized ones, and they did really well at dramatizing those. It managed to do that without feeling weird that at some points there were sections that weren't dramatized and were just read by the reader, because he's still a pretty good reader and it didn't bother me that it switched in and out. But as it went on, it's like they forgot about having the dramatized elements, and then when they did have dramatized elements, it would be like in the middle of one of the smaller sections, and it would not be like an important scene. So I was like, why are you even bothering with this? It wasn't the best executed audiobook either. Like, I do think if you're gonna have the dramatized elements, like, try to be consistent with it throughout if you're gonna do it, or just don't do it at all. Just have one reader read it. I actually ended up returning the audiobook because I'm not gonna reread this book, and I'm also probably not gonna listen to the audiobook because another thing that did irritate the heck out of me about the audiobook is that they did it in like huge 7 hours or like 5 hours blocks. Like basically there's 3 sections in this, and they would do like the whole section, which was like 300 plus pages, in one thing instead of splitting it into little small parts. So I couldn't even like read this if I wanted to read it in print and like find my spot again, because I was afraid I was gonna get lost because it was like a 7-hour block of listening. This book is weirdly hard to read because I didn't totally hate it. Like I said, I did fairly like the front part, and the middle part was not too bad. But the end, I kind of did hate. But I still, even then, like, hated it less than some other books that I've read. So it was very hard to read because I do kind of respect the ideas that were put into the book, like I said, and I do feel like I could see how at the time when this came out it would have been fairly innovative in terms of science fiction. I am glad that I like completed Dune, to say that I completed Dune, but kind of not getting science fiction supreme masterpiece. Like, no, I don't think it's that. I think there are definitely authors who've executed world building and science fiction so much better than I've read, and so that is why in the end I kind of settled on giving it 3 stars, because there were parts of it that I did enjoy. I mean, overall though, like if I think about it, if I think too much about the end of this book, it's probably like a 2.5 stars, but if I give it extra points for like the front part being fairly decent, I just decided to settle on 3 stars. Those were my wacky and ranty book reviews. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about slugging up a Dune, and that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching, my fabulous peeps. I will see you soon. Bye!